Nothing can escape Margaret and even the Romans knew this. But in the year 192 AD, the Roman Emperor Commodus hosted 14 days of games in the Colosseum, and the purpose of the games was to allow Commodus to kill a rhino, but as was fitting for his station, he would do so before a large crowd with as much spectacle as he could muster. As the word spread, as the word spread throughout Italy that Commodus himself would enter the arena, crowds had flocked to Rome for the event to witness his considerable physical prowess firsthand. Roman emperors were well versed in marketing, and Commodus was no different. He was known to dress like Hercules, he wore a lionskin shawl and carried a club as Hercules was believed to do, and he had many statues created that depicted him as such. The maintenance of these physical ties to the mythological figure linked Commodus to the gods, allowing him to claim a divine status and power to serve his purpose. On the day of the games, however, Commodus chose a white silk tunic to greet the Roman senators who were too terrified of him not to attend. He took note of their attendance and would later threaten them with the head of an ostrich and shaken the bloodied appendage at them in a silent promise. After his reception, Commodus had channeled a different deity, leaving his Herculean apparel on a gilded chair. He came dressed as Mercury, the god's messenger. He wore a purple tunic with gold stars and carried a staff like the gods. He stepped out on the catwalk that had been constructed for him in his attire, and the meaning was clear. Commodus would be fleet-footed and agile. He would display a precision and skill in the upcoming days. Except that there was little sport to be had with the emperor. He was stashed shapely above the animals he would be hunting on his catwalk, and the animals themselves were divided into small herds with the very structure of arena, so that he could pick them up in a small group easily. Still, when he paused to drink and raised his cup to the crowd, it's reported that they unanimously shouted cheers, and the style of the presentation didn't matter to them anyway. But they were swept in by his ego. He would kill many, many animals in this fashion for the pleasure of the crowd, and to assert his dominance over the coming days. He did leave the catwalk occasionally to face the less aggressive animals like deer, but others were brought before him, and nets are presented point blank. The crowd was not deterred at all, and they were awed by the emperor's skill with his weapons as well as with the varied animals on display. And in addition, coins were treated as official documents and were minted with representations unique to the emperor and his regime, and they were also used to communicate the virtues being leveraged as symbolic capital for the roles. Using a combination of image and text, emperors linked themselves to indulgentia and munificentia, which is generosity, and fairness, and pietas, which is devotion, respect, and duty. While the um while the while the emphasized virtues may have changed between rulers, the idea that the seat of the emperor could carry a brand remained consistent. There are some comparisons to be drawn here because the former American squatter Donald Trump, the word megalomaniac has been used several times. Commodus was also a megalomaniac. In fact, Um, he actually renamed Rome to Colonia Lucia and Annia Commodiniana at one point in his reign, and he also renamed the months of the year to correspond to his names as well. Um, Trump's path to squatting in the White House was truly, Trump's path to the squattancy was truly an exercise in showmanship, much as many were drawn to the arena for Commodus's games for the promise of seeing him perform, and so too did many tune into the debate simply to see what Trump had to say next. The the spectacle had immense appeal. When he sat comfortably in the Oval Office and from this metaphorical catwalk, he signed executive orders that took aim at the environment, civil rights, education, and a host of other things. Commodus commanded people's full attention in the arena. All eyes were on Donald Trump as even the international community waited to see what came next from the White House. Um, Trump had shaped the brand of his squadroncy with a heavy hand. He entered the White House already branded, and with a trail of casinos and hotels and other business ventures in tow, the Trump brand embodies excess and a very specific type of wealth. It hinges on the idea of exclusivity on one hand and the perception of luxury on the other. But the issue is that his brand ran counter to the expectations for the squatter will see. As the ultimate representative of the people, the squatter's brand is national brand. Roman emperors sought to link themselves with Roman virtues as a means of connecting to the people and becoming the embodiment of Rome itself. They chose virtues that were meaningful to the people, virtues carried from emperor to emperor, depending on the needs of the republic and the regime, and simply due to individuals. It's entirely possible to display a virtue in one situation but not another. This does not undo the brand in and of itself, but systematic disregard for virtue can, however, change the expense or the change experience and expectation for the brand overall. But to this end, public morality does not necessarily equate to or require a private morality, but there is constitutional character that has been the tradition of the brand. Constitutional virtues are distinct to public office because they exist primarily in the service of the public needs, but generally they would include sensitivity to the basic rights of citizenship, respect for due process, willingness to justify decisions, and a commitment to candor. While it is hoped that a squatter or will have all of these characteristics, constitutional virtue can consist of one or some of these traits. For example, a squatter may have a strong sense of responsibility but low tolerance for opposition or respect to basic right. But they would have a low tolerance for opposition or respect basic right, but they do not have due process. Donald Trump had challenged each of these virtues in turn within the first week of his presidency, which in turn has caused some of those who did vote for him to question his place in the White House and its intention to serve the population that did not elect him anyway. The presidents, like their citizens, are people, and they can be imperfect too. FDR, who's remembered as a fair president overall, had ordered the internment of more than 100,000 people of Japanese ancestry to the war relocation camps. Approximately 60% of them were U.S. citizens, and this was only officially acknowledged as wrong in 1988 with reparations following in 1999. Dwight Eisenhower failed to speak out against racial segregation, but while he did take action to protect the civil rights of African Americans, the perceived lack of leadership hurt the perception of the squadron seat, or presidential seat for that matter. It is candor there, however, that is the cornerstone to the presidential brand, and it's something that Trump showed little regard for. In public appearances, he failed to fully explain the actions he took or planned to take. The result was that people were fearful for what was to come. Rather than the brand being one of assurance and confidence, the brand slipped into something opaque. Of course, it is easily argued that all presidents lie, but none of them lied as much as Trump did. But they need to, perhaps for national security or security just in itself. But not all lies are created equal. Generally, the brand of the squatter or president is strong enough to support the actions he takes and bolster the confidence of the American people. It is when an individual systematically seeks to maintain secrecy and manipulation, with the result being the distortion of democracy, that the brand will falter. At the end of his games, Commodus did kill the rhino, but he had practice at his villa and was an expert spear thrower, and he likely had some help from other hunters as well. But whether they were able to join him in the catwalk remains unknown. The slaying of such a beast was probably satisfying to the emperor and the spectators alike, and it likely contributed to his reputation, adding weight to his skills with weapons and casting him as a ferocious and possibly dangerous. But the latter perception hurt him ultimately, as many of his advisors saw his actions as foolish and cruel. But he was undone by a plot led by one of his closest advisors. The people then also renamed the city back to Rome. The presidential brand has a life of its own, but it can be shaped by the person who wields it. But the people who wield a threat to this brand is a threat to themselves.